Text. Hi guys, today we are going to talk about the text tool. We mentioned it a little bit already when we talked about layer styles, and now we'll look at all the details of working with this tool. Here we go. Open our favorite Photoshop and go to the text tool, which is indicated by the letter T. You won't confuse it with anything. There are 4 types of text: horizontal, vertical, and 2 types of mask text. Let's open the horizontal text tool. If I click on my file now, then I have this lorem ipsum inscription. This is an arbitrary inscription. It shows you what size and font will be the text that you will now start working with. And every time I click, an inscription like this is added. And if I now change the font and click, then I will have an inscription already made in this font that I have installed now. And perhaps this function can be useful to someone, but to be honest, it bothers me a little, because when I want to type my text and click, I get this inscription, and before I start typing my text, I have to delete it somehow. That is, I have selected it now, and I'm starting to type my own text. I don't really like this additional movement. Perhaps it is convenient for someone. If you like it, then please leave this option and use it with pleasure. But if it annoys you, then you can always turn it off. To do this, go to Edit, Preferences, Type, and here a few new type layers with placeholder text option is chosen by default. We can remove the checkmark here, and the inscription will be deleted. We can also increase the number of recently used fonts displayed here. In the process, you understand wherever you need it or not, and then you'll decide which number to put here. So I click OK, and look, I click again in an empty place, and I don't have any extra inscriptions, and I just start typing my text. That's pretty simple. Every time I start typing, I just click and immediately have a new layer on which the text will be typed. So I have just typed the word Photoshop. I have it on the layer 1. Now I'm going to click somewhere in an empty place, and as you can see, the text I have typed coincides with the name of the layer. Let's talk about how we can move our text. Please note that as soon as I move the cursor away from the text itself, it looks at the cursor when the Move tool is active, and this way I can move my text across the canvas. And this tick, which stands at the end, it shows that the text tool is still active on this layer. And I can continue typing this phrase. That is, for example, I put a space and write something else. As a matter of fact, I can type as long as I want. Here we have such an endless line that completely goes beyond the canvas, until I click Enter and transfer the text to another line. I have transferred it far enough. If I press the Ctrl during typing, then I get the frame that we know from free transform mode, and I can rotate the text. For example, like that. I can stretch it, and to make all the same actions that we do in free transform mode. If you want the text to change proportionally, and you have early versions of Photoshop, then you need to hold down Shift key, and after the text is ready, you can click this check mark. After that, you can start typing new text, and it will already be on a new layer. If we want to edit one word in our text, then it is enough to click on it twice. This word will be selected, and you can replace it with some other word. If you need to select all the text on this layer, then click 3 times, and you can type some other text. To remove the selection, press Escape. There is another way to select all the text on the layer. You need to double-click on the icon with the letter T on the text layer. The text is selected. When the text is selected, we cannot only replace some word, but for example, change its size or choose a different font type. Now I'm just going through the fonts, and let's say I like this one. When the text is selected, it is illuminated with a black color, and usually it is quite convenient. But if suddenly, for some reason, it interferes you to work, then you can always hide the selection by pressing the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+H. At the same time, the text remains selected, and you can continue to change its parameters. For example, you can choose some other font. In order to see the selected area, press Ctrl+H again, and you can continue to edit our text. In particular, we can also change the size in pixels. Let's increase it a little more and change the color by clicking on this square here, which indicates the color. We choose the color that we need, from the proposed palette. After that, you can remove the selection completely by pressing Escape. By the way, the text can also be moved with the Move tool when the text tool is not active. Also, we can start editing text without choosing Text tool. We can just double click on it with the Move tool and start editing it again. Let's change the color, for example, like that. And now let's take a closer look at the top menu. First, you can choose the orientation of the text. Now we have a horizontal text, but we can click on this icon and our text becomes vertical. Click again, it's horizontal again. And we can also immediately select a vertical text tool, if we want, and start typing immediately in vertical text. Here is a vertical text. Next, we have a font selection window. Here I think everything is clear. In general, there is nothing special here. Just like in all programs with fonts, there are a huge number of fonts. Also, you can click on the icon and the Adobe website will be opened. Here you can download additional fonts. In addition, you can download fonts from the internet and install them. Let's say you have chosen some font that you like and you want to install it. Let's see how this can be done. I have already downloaded one of these fonts, and now we'll try to install it. Open the folder into which we downloaded the archive with the font and unzip it. We click on this file with TTF extension. And look, I just have a sample of the font that I downloaded. And I need to click install. So the installation is started. Our font is installed. If suddenly something went wrong, then you can just copy this file. Go to the control panel on your computer, select the font folder, and just paste this font there. Let's check if I have this font among the fonts. I'll type the first letters of the font name, and let's see the rest of the possibilities. Now, when the Move tool is active, I click twice, and the Text tool is activated too. We have already looked at the font selection options. Also, it is possible to choose the style of the font. For example, let's take Arial that has different styles, and you can choose the one that you like. For example, here is, but of course, not all fonts have these styles. Next, we have the size, which we have set in pixels, but you can adjust its size. You can click this arrow and select the size you need, or type the size in the window, or you can simply hold the cursor over the letter T. And look, I'm pulling a little bit to the left, and the font is decreasing. I pull a little bit to the right, and the font increases. This is really very convenient, and I recommend you to use it. Next, you can choose the anti-aliasing. I recommend you to leave the smooth one, because in this case your fonts will be displayed in the best way. A little further, you can see the windows that allow you to align the text. I think it's not worth stopping too much here, because these options are similar to the well-known options in the Word. And if you have some big text typed, well, not 3 words like mine, but exactly the whole text, then you can select it and use one of these buttons to align it to the left or right edge. Next comes a window related to the color. Well, everything is clear here. Choose the desired color and click OK. And here is a very interesting button, Warp Text. So let's take a closer look at it. Let's take this picture. I have already typed the text, and let's change it a little. First of all, I would like to capitalize the first letter. I click twice with the Move tool and switch to the Text tool. Then I just select this letter and put a capital letter in its place. Let's select the whole text. I click 3 times. You need to click quickly to make everything selected. And we switch to the text warp mode. Click on this button. So the warp text window opens. Let's see what we have here. Here we have different options for changing this text. For example, we could make this text in form of an arc. Click and such an arc appears, which we can adjust and make the one we like best. For example, like this, or wherever suits you best. Well, let's say we agree, and we get this text. Let's see other options. There are a lot of them here. Of course, I won't show everything. Well, for example, a flag. We can completely curve it, or like that. That can be done differently. That is, it just all depends on your imagination. After you have applied the text warp, you can also remember about the layer styles option. And for example, added some other effects to this text. For example, you can make a stroke or do something else. I'm not going to talk about it too much right now, because I think you can come up with something on your own, and something interesting. In order to increase the size of my inscription, I click on it, and a dimensional frame appears. I will increase in usual mode, as we always do with a free transform. You can even rotate it a little more somehow. And then I click somewhere in the free space. I hope that after this lesson you'll easily be able to type any phrase in both vertical and horizontal text, as well as change its configuration with warp text option. You'll have this picture on which you can edit a beautiful inscription, or you can take some other picture if you want. And I also want to draw attention to the fact that a bee or maybe a bumblebee can be drawn with the pen tool, and if you want, you can also edit some elements with this tool. It would also be very cool if you try to download some font from the internet and install it on your computer, because if you don't try, you won't remember. Therefore, I really advise you to practice everything that we go through, even if we don't have any special exercises for this. That's not all at all. Let's continue to study the text tool. There are still a lot of interesting things left. Let's now see how you can fit text into a specific area. For example, I just take the text tool, press the left mouse button and draw a rectangle like this. There my text will be located if I start typing it now. Let's try to type something. I will make the font a little bigger. Look, now, when one line is finished, the text automatically switches to another so that it is inscribed exactly in the area I have set. That is, I could of course type some meaningful text here, and it would fit in exactly the same way. And very often, when we create some kind of projects in which the fields will later be filled with the text, we need to insert some kind of text template so that it looks well. And this option is also provided by Photoshop. To do this, go to the text tool and select Paste Lorem Ipsum. And look, an abstract text is inserted, with which we can fill the space of our text block in order to see how exactly it will look like. I just click somewhere in an empty place to remove this frame and see what my text will look like. Let's get back to it. Yes, I click, and for example, I can use the alignment option right now. I select the text. Let's increase its size a little. And look, for example, I can align the text to the left, and that's what I got. This is exactly the option we talked about last time. You can copy and paste text from other sources into this text block, for example, from Word. But to do this, you'll need to press the Ctrl+C keyboard shortcut. The copy option, which appears when you press the right mouse button, won't work. For some reason, it is the only way to paste the text from Word into Photoshop. After we have copied the text, we press Ctrl+V, and this text is pasted in Photoshop. Pay attention to such a moment. Now I'm going to increase the size of the text, so that it doesn't fit, and pay attention to the lower right corner. It becomes crossed out like this. This shows that if you stretch our frame, there will be more text there. That is, I typed it in a fairly large font, and therefore this text doesn't fit. So, if you want to enter it anyway, then you need to reduce its size until the square disappears, which you see in the lower right corner. So, select the entire text. Even the one that does not fit, you need to press Ctrl+A. Well, then you can already set some size in pixels. So, let it be so. Now we have looked at how you can fit text into a rectangular area. But let's see how we can fit it into any other custom area. To do this, you will need to choose a shape that we have talked about. You can of course take any shape, but we will take an ellipse. Draw some kind of ellipse in which we will have a text inscribed. Let's say like this. Of course, it may have some colored borders, but it may not have them. It doesn't matter. Then we take the text tool and click inside the shape we created. We have a special frame like this, and now we can insert the text that we have created, or insert an abstract text that we have already seen, which is called Lorem Ipsum. Click and everything is filled with this text. You can increase its size, so that the circle is completely filled. I press the Ctrl and move my hand a little on the text icon. Look, I have such an icon with a cross here. It means that the text that I am supposedly interested in now is not going to fit in. Therefore, you can reduce it a little more. Well, it probably fits now. We click in any free space and the selected area is removed. And here is our text in all its glory. If you need to select some individual fragments of it, you can double-click on any word, for example, or select some piece of text and increase its size. Let's say this is my title. And that's what happened. Just like that, you can paste text into absolutely any shape that you have drawn yourself. using the pen tool, or any shape that you have chosen among the custom shape tools. I have shown you how to insert the text into some colored contour, but there are situations when the text needs to be distributed along some contour, not written into it, but distributed. For example, to make the text arranged in a circle, we'll create a new layer in the Path mode. By the way, before that I've drawn in Shape mode. Draw a circle. So this will be our circle, which will be located a little beyond the circle that we already have, and take the text tool. We put it. When we bring the text cursor to the path of the circle, it changes its shape. I click on this place and now I can type any text. And I have typed it in this way. Or you can try interesting lorem ipsum again to see how it looks like. With the Ctrl key pressed, you can adjust the size of the circle if you need it. Sometimes you need to place your text not along some geometrical path, but along the path that you created yourself. Let's try to do it. Let's take the pen tool in Path mode and draw a certain path along which our text will be located. Then take the text tool. Please note that left alignment should be selected. Turn it on. We bring the cursor to the line that we drew to our path. You can see that when we bring the cursor to the path, its shape changes. Click in the area when we are going to start typing the text. After that, we set some parameters of our text and type it. Here, for example, I have typed some text. I can double-click on it to increase its size, so that it is located along my path. We can adjust our path and change the configuration of the inscription by holding down Ctrl. When the text tool is turned on, we can move our anchor points. Thus, the shape of our inscription can be changed. If you click on the black arrow, you will see such an icon that allows you to transfer this point from which the inscription of our text begins, and we can change it in this way. If I pull my hand down a little, then the inscription will mirror. I pull my hand up, and the inscription returns to its original state. And of course, you can edit some layer styles to this word in order to make it more consistent with the whole design. Two special palettes are also designed for working with the text. They are called Character and Paragraph. You can find them if you go to the window menu. Let's start with the Paragraph palette. But here everything is very simple. You can see that with this palette we can align our text in different ways. Let's select our text and do, for example, like this, so that there is filling completely around the edges. Or for example, let's align text to the right, as you prefer. Everything here is identical to the Word program. The character palette is more interesting. Here we can change the style of font. For example, let me put italics. You can also change the space between the lines here. Look, I select this parameter and reduce the space between the lines. It is decreasing, and it is very noticeable. And of course, you can increase it in the same way. In addition, you can change the space between the letters. For example, you see, I move the slider to the right. The distance between the letters increases. I move the slider to the left, it decreases. Sometimes it can be useful, but I advise you not to use it too much. In addition, we can change the height and width of the letters. For example, let's put 200 here now. And that's what we get. We'll return it as it was. And we can change the height too. Let's also reduce it on the contrary. That's how it all works. And another option allows you to change the space between some two specific letters. To do this, point the cursor between them. And here we can set a larger or smaller distance, for example. We can reduce the space or increase it. I think this function can be useful if you are working, for example, on creating a logo, and there is a need for such a font arrangement. The next line allows us to apply different effects. Let's try. Select our word. And for example, we can make its outline bolder. You can choose this semi-bold italic. This is especially useful sometimes if a font doesn't have styles. This partly allows you to imitate italics and bold writing, where there is none. But you shouldn't abuse it either, because it doesn't always look beautiful. Let's see the next one. Right now I have the text type in a lowercase font, but I can make all the letters capitalized by clicking on this button, or conversely, I can make all the letters lowercase. This can be very useful. In addition, we can create such options all letter arrangement when it is necessary. This is usually necessary when you need to specify a degree or a square of a number, etc. In addition, we can, for example, underline our text or cross it out. And also we can choose the language in which the spelling of our text will be checked. I recommend that you practice working with this palette. Try its different options so that you can remember them better. Well, we'll now move on to the next type of the text, which is called the mask text. The mask text can be vertical and horizontal, just like a regular text. Here they are, both of these tools. Of course, we'll now take horizontal ones. And let's start typing some text. Well, for example, I will type, as soon as I clicked on the screen, it was tinted red for me. This means that the area has become masked for me, and now I'm just typing. If I need to move it, then I can shift the cursor a little and move it a little, for example, in the center. When I move the cursor, it has an icon, or the Move tool. If I double click on this word, it will be selected just like the regular text, and I can, for example, change the size of font. Well, for example, let's increase it in size a little, like that. After that, I can click somewhere in an empty place, and immediately I have a selected area. Now we can go to the Layers palette and press Ctrl+G to copy the resulting selection to a new layer, where we can now apply layer styles. Click twice. This is an inscription I got, but of course there is a lot more to come up with, and add it. And you can also create a new layer below the text layer and fill it with a color, for example, like this. And you can also change the transparency or add some other effects. It all depends on your preferences. So, text mask is such an interesting tool. I have increased the text size a little more. And let's move on to the homework. We have a lot of exercises today. The first exercise is to place the text in a predefined area. The second exercise is the placement of the text in some shape. I have a circle. And the placement of the text along the circle. Next, I suggest you create a text along the path that you will create. Well, the last exercise is the text mask. You can use both my images as examples and your own. For example, you can take images that we used when we talked about pen and shape tools. Perhaps you'll get some kind of unique design. As always, I'm waiting for your work. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.